How's it going, folks? I'm Kyle McDonald, and welcome to Beyond Ruins' first podcast. I'm here with my friend Landon. Landon, if you want to go ahead and tell the people who you are.
Yeah, for sure. My name is Landon Bowen. I'm 21 years old. I am going to be a senior in college at the University of Illinois. I have a background in, many sports, basketball, football, track. I boxed for a couple years collegiately at the University of Illinois, and now I'm currently in the middle of finishing my degree and pursuing a modeling career on the side, stationed out of Chicago at a agency called 10MGMT, and I'm excited to be here.
Hell yeah, man. Welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks for having me.
So, how has school been, man? How's just life been in general?
Man, it's been fast. It's been faster each year. I'd say the biggest things are just the shifts in, my personality and just my values. They're growing every day, they're growing every year, and they're evolving every year. The more experiences I have, the more things that I encounter, they shift and shape my reality. And, I'm just trying to learn how to navigate those while, meeting new people, like I said, gaining new experiences and just pursuing things that I've been passionate about and just learning what I do and what I don't like to do, and making mistakes in areas where I thought I wanted to be successful, and different things like that. So I'd say I'm at a time in my life where I'm evolving at a pace that it's sometimes hard to keep up with, but that's the part of life, and I'm just glad I'm in this stage and I'm able to have that experience and learn those things that this early on.
Hell yeah, man. You got to think too, bro. Like, we're young. Like you said, you're 21. You trying to do college. You were doing multiple sports. Now you're doing a modeling agency. You got other shit going on. How do you handle all of that? Like,
Right.
First of all, how do you even keep up with and manage doing all of that?
No, totally. I'd say the biggest thing for me that goes with myself and the people I put myself around. Like, you got to have a good support system.
Hell yeah.
You got to have people you trust around you. You got to have people that are in your corner
100%.
and that, resonate with your beliefs and your passion, because, it's easy to pursue something on your own in a lot of ways because you care about it. But when you have people in your corner that love you, and you have family members or friends that are, cheering you on and supporting you, it makes it that much easier to go harder and push for those things that you want to do and achieve. Even though you don't always want to do it for someone else, it's always important too, I feel like, to have those people that you do it for, because, it is sometimes hard to do things for yourself when you're not always in the best place. You're not always in the best mental state to go do things for yourself, like I said. So I'd say it starts with obviously yourself ultimately and how you feel mentally, but then it goes back to how your support system is and how, the people you surround yourself interact with your beliefs and interact with your passion. So I think those are the two things that I'm trying to marry together and really try to not find too much different in, and just try to really balance the two out.
Because let's talk about it for a minute, like, a lot of times, like, I know for myself, like, especially when I was going through rehab the first time, I went because I thought that's what people wanted me to do. I went because that's what my family needed me to do, and after interventions,
Right.
and everybody's reading their letters and stuff, it's like, all right, I gotta go. And I went and I did the thing, but it still didn't stick because I never did it. At that point, it wasn't doing it for me. I was doing it because another person told me that that's what I should be doing. Even translated across the time when I was trying to get into the military. That's what I thought my family wanted of me. That's what I thought I was supposed to be doing. And I didn't really find true purpose until I started leaning into what I thought my calling was, what my purpose was. Even going back to rehab the second time, that's when it really stuck for me. That's when I really found, okay, this is going to work. This is going to help me move forward in my life. And I'm actually taking lessons and applying them. Is when I did it for myself. When I was tired of my own excuses, when I was tired of my same old shit every day, and I realized nobody was coming to save me. Nobody was going to come do this for me. This
Right.
was something that if I wanted to fix this, I was going to have to fix it.
Totally.
So I think at the same time, though, I couldn't have done it, like you said, without my support systems. I had my mom calling, or I called my mom damn near every day when I was in rehab. Even up to this day, my family support and the people that I have around me that push me to, even with my business, even with trying to get this off the ground and moving, having that person there to help you through the murky, help you through the hard, help you through the obscurities of trying to
Right.
become better, trying to grow. It's almost like ineffable, really, if to have a person, to have somebody, and like you said, you got to be able to trust them.
Right.
You got to be able to, because sometimes when you go run to other people, and have you ever had that in your experience, like when you run to other people sometimes and you bring them an idea and then they kind of shit on it and it makes you feel like, damn, like.
Totally. And I think that's something too that you have to find peace in. You have to learn how to or sometimes acknowledge it, but not take it to heart, because you have a support system around you to help you recognize your blind spots and to see things that you maybe don't see for yourself.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you have to go fix those blind spots.
Okay.
Only a person outside of yourself can only do so much. They can only help you so much. Like I said, they can help you recognize those things, but it's you that has to fix them.
Come on now.
And so once you are able to, separate the two, it makes it a lot easier to live with what people are saying, because you're not taking it to heart so much. You're recognizing it from a objective standpoint, and then still recognizing, they themselves can't fix me, but their recognition of my mistakes can allow me to fix myself.
Okay.
And that's something that I've tried to really acknowledge and really try to, take to heart, because I think an area of my life where that has become super prevalent and just has been like a, sticking your finger in an open wound, has just been like in my, personal love life relationships. And, having a partner that you love and having a partner that you care about, but still having your own issues that are unfixable through the relationship.
Okay.
Because
like what?
So I say for myself, something that is a big issue, or just has been an issue in the past that, I'm mending and fixing, is, shutting down whenever, things get hard, shutting down and shutting people out of my life. But at the same time, when I do those things, it's almost like a detachment thing where I want those people to come and try to come like coddle me.
Right.
Subconsciously, I want those things, but at the same time, I'm consciously pushing those people away, because, no one likes to dwell on their mistakes. Nobody wants to focus on their insecurities, their issues, because it's hard. It's difficult. It's not something that makes you feel good about yourself.
Come on now.
And, ultimately, at the end of the day, no matter how much you love yourself, we inherently want to feel good about ourselves. We inherently want good things for ourselves, because at the end of the day, you're all you got. So if you're able to recognize those things sooner, it allows you to mend and understand your relationships a lot better, because there were certain situations where I wanted to blame my partner, or I wanted to blame, my partner's lack of understanding more than my own lack of discipline, or my own lack of just effort, because, it's easy, like I said, to not acknowledge your problems. And that's a lack of effort at the end of the day. And that's a big place where I notice, like, love can only do so much. Love is a very powerful tool, but at the end of the day, it's a tool.
Yes.
It isn't going to fix your problems. It isn't going to make you who you want to be at the end of the day, because love is an outside source from other people. If you don't get that love inwardly, you're never going to have that peace you want, and you're never going to be able to give those people the love that you want to give, because you're not even giving it to yourself.
If I can't love myself, how am I going to love somebody else?
And I recognize that, early on, but I never really leaned into it. And I didn't really understand the consequences that could come from not doing that. And whenever, I was in a relationship and my partner sat there and she told me, I love you, I care about you, but I have to do what's best for me. And if this isn't what's best for me, I have to remove myself from that. And that really obviously stuck with me, because it showed me in a lot of ways that love is, like I said, is a great thing. It's important. You have to have love in a relationship. That's a building block, but it's not going to save your relationship.
No,
it's not.
I want to touch on two of the things that you said. The first one, which was what you just said, what do you do when your partner's got good boundaries? Because that's something sometimes as men that we really struggle with. So I remember when I was working as an addiction counselor, I saved it in my phone, a quote from one of my patients, and he came up to me because he was having a struggle with his wife, and he actually came up to me and said, he's like, Kyle, I hate it when my partner has good boundaries because then I can't manipulate them. And I was like, holy shit, that's some self-awareness right there. But then there's so much to dive into that, because when your partner, or just in another relationship in general, when you meet somebody that's got that, like, I'm going to hold you accountable, I'm going to hold you to a standard, I have that much value and respect for myself, it almost kind of in a way forces you to level up if you're not able to meet that
and if
standard.
you love that person too,
you will. And you should take it as like, I want to be better. I want to be able to show up for that person the way they need me to show up. And the second one that I really wanted to touch on was something along the lines that you said about effort. It just slipped my mind. I want to ask you though, it'll come back to me. I have a horrible time of forgetting things, but I want to ask you though, because you brought up a few good points. What would be a red flag? And then you kind of already laid it out, but what would be a red flag that you've really had to confront, deal with in yourself? Oh, I remember what it was. Okay, so on our end of things, as men sometimes, and that was one of the biggest lessons I have really had to take in relationships, was sometimes it's not the other person. Sometimes it's me. And that was one of the biggest lessons I learned in rehab, really, was that I'm the common denominator in all of my bullshit. Every time a problem happens to me is there for it. So sometimes I can't always point the finger like I want to, and it's your fault and it's your this. At some point in time, if I blame everybody else isn't going to come fix my shit.
Yeah, no,
so
totally.
When you look at a relationship, expand on that a little bit more. When you're faced with a moment where you're like, holy shit, it's not even
I'm the problem.
It's not them, it's me.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I'm a spiritual person.
Hell yeah, me too.
I believe in God, and I believe that that's the way to true happiness. And if you don't make God a part of your life, you're never going to be complete. And that goes back to just knowing yourself and recognizing that you have to have that spiritual bond within in order to allow those feelings and desires to manifest outwardly. And like I said, like, it's like goes back to the golden rule, something you're taught, when you're in third, fourth grade, treat others how you want to be treated.
And you would think it should be that simple.
And it almost should be. You wish it was. And that's something that you have to remind yourself daily. You have to tell yourself daily, like, am I thinking of this from my perspective, or am I just thinking it from my perspective, or am I thinking of it from their perspective as well?
Being able to take that step into another person's shoes, we call, empathy. The basic. I'm a big believer in, to feel pain in itself makes you alive, but to be able to feel another person's pain, it makes you human at the end of the day. So in that aspect, when, like, even in my own relationship, there's times where when I look at my partner and I can see it in their affect and in their behavior where I should be doing better, I should be showing up more. Or if, we're having a time where we're not somewhere along the line, we're not on the same page, being able to take that step back and being like, what is my part in this? Well, it's not fully this person, or what, again, like you said, it's not always my perception, the way I'm thinking, because shit, I know my best thinking is not always correct. My
Right.
first thought's not always right. So sometimes I have to be able to take that objective step back for a second and look at the whole.
And I think that goes like back to just like, while yes, you still have a partner, you ultimately do have to focus on yourself. Like I said earlier, you can only control yourself at the end of the day, and you're only in charge of yourself. You're the only person that you have autonomy over.
Come on now.
So I always try to look at situations, or am now especially trying to look at situations from a lens of, yes, maybe this person wronged me, or I felt an emotional response to this person's action, but how can I be better from it? Or what can I do to make the most out of it? And that goes from an interaction you have with your girlfriend, that goes for an interaction with your friend, that goes to an interaction you have with a random person on the street.
With anybody.
And I heard a really good quote, and it said, you don't attract what you want, you attract what you vibrate.
Break that down.
So, that's something that's really stuck with me, because it's easy to attract what you want, or it's easy to think you're attracting what you want. But if you're not giving that energy off, you can never expect that to align. And that's something I had to recognize in myself, that if I'm not aligning with the things I want, how can I expect to have them?
And it's, it's that idea, and I like that you brought up the whole spirituality aspect of that too, where like, if you think of us as light beings, that we're matter vibrating at different states and frequencies, we're energy. At the end of the day, if I have a really low vibration, if I'm really low, I have negative mindsets constantly, I'm constantly surrounded around people that love misery and all that other shit, and I'm wondering why I keep getting more of the same, but then you look at it where other people start moving up that ladder, and I'm raising my vibrational state, I'm doing more things for myself, I'm deepening my connections with the people around me, and then all of a sudden it's like the universe responds to it and starts becoming bountiful, and all these things that you once prayed for start showing up, not because the universe just gave you a break,
right?
Because you actually moved in alignment with the things and the versions of yourself that
you
need to be for those things to even show up.
And I definitely want to like touch on that and go into that a little bit more, because I've been
by all means, man, go ahead.
I've been reading a book called The Power of Your Subconscious Mind.
Okay.
And the book has really opened
Who's it by, real quick, just in case anybody wants to.
Oh, now I look like
I'm gonna look it up. You're good. I'm gonna look it up. That's why we got Google right here.
I don't want to look like a phony. But the book, the premise of the book is the power of belief and the power of what you impress upon your mind, and how those things are much more powerful than we even give them power. And I've recognized in my own life that
Joseph Murphy.
Correct. Joseph Murphy. There you go.
Joseph Murphy. The Power of the Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy, if y'all want to look it up.
Correct. So what that kind of dives into is just how what we impress upon our mind is going to reflect outward.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever heard the term microcosm, macrocosm.
Briefly.
So
but just for the, for anybody that doesn't.
So what that basically means is like, you take a small portion of a moment or an instance.
Okay.
You take a small feeling, that is a manifestation of your entire reality. If you're feeling these negative feelings, if you're feeling these things inwardly, of course they're going to reflect outwardly, because a lot of times people don't realize life is a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Interesting.
Life is a self-fulfilling prophecy in terms of you are going to chase the things that you tell your mind you want, or to tell your mind that you deserve.
So in essence, it's like as above, so below.
Correct.
As within, so without. As I see the universe, so it is.
Just like the Bible says, that you must empty your cup so that you can be filled with the Holy Spirit.
And that's said across multiple different. Yes, that shows up many times.
And that shows up in Buddhism. That shows up in Hinduism. All these different religions, say it in their own way, but they're all saying the same thing.
Yep.
And that's a principle that I've held on to, and something that has struck a chord with me time and time again, because you have to continue to renew your mind daily. You have to clean out the bad spirits in order to allow the good ones to come in. And it's a daily battle.
Yes.
And it also says in the Bible, we don't fight. We're not fighting against people or in powers. We're fighting against principles. And we're fighting against different frequencies. Like I said earlier, we're fighting energy. We're not fighting physical battles. That's why the mental is so important. And that's why the mental is the driver of your life, because whatever you impress upon your mind will reflect into your life. And I've noticed that with small things in my life, with big things in my life. And, I'll touch on it a little bit, just like in the last month and a half, I've been pursuing this modeling stuff. I haven't allowed myself to tell myself, what if I'm not good enough? What if I'm not able?
Even letting it seep into your mind.
Because even, like I said, you don't realize, not you, but just people in general don't realize
100%.
how powerful the mind, the really subconscious mind is, because the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between a joke and, what you actually believe.
Can we talk about that though for a second?
No, for sure, totally.
The amount of times that because I know I'm a person that's really started to try to be big on that too, where I don't even allow I will try really hard to divert, I'll put it that way, because the thoughts come. Of course, sometimes you get intrusive thoughts that just show up, and they Mario 1-up punch your brain. I try to do like the Buddhist teaching says, when you have negative emotions, sit with them like a mother nurturing a crying child.
No, totally.
Don't cast them out, don't judge them, don't get angry at yourself for feeling or thinking these things, but you can redirect. So I think sometimes, like you said, with my business or in other areas of my life where I might feel doubt or I might feel insecurity, and the thoughts might show up of this isn't going to work, I immediately try to shift that thought into something else, because people don't tend to realize that you thinking that, you speaking it into existence, you are already
you're conforming to it.
You're setting your own stage for, like you said, self-actualizing prophecies, where we set up our own environments. We again, subconsciously will ourselves into this own pit of negativity that we didn't even we would have never been at in the first place. Kind of like the idea of the observer always changes what they view. And so when you look at things and you start to be like, okay, this isn't going to work out, it's not going to, because you've already told yourself and the universe it's not going to. So now you're more in alignment with these different paths to that, versus I'm going to succeed, and believing it. And even if you don't believe it, just saying it lines you up.
Well, even if you just want to get slightly scientific with it,
go ahead.
Just the idea of our eyes, when we see things, we're not taking in an image, we're taking in we're taking in light, we're piecing these images
and
together,
our brain makes it make sense. Yes.
So we're creating our reality daily.
Yes.
Our reality, there's no objective reality. There's no such thing. Reality is
fully subjective.
It's fully subjective. We can both look at something and see something differently.
I actually learned that my junior year in human anatomy, when we were going over that kind of stuff, where every single human sees reality slightly different. No one person's experience is the same.
And that's what you have to realize. The more you hone in on those feelings and the more you understand that, people have no choice but to conform to your reality, because
it's the laws of attraction,
No, that is your reality at the end of the day. So the things will conform around your life to those things, whether it is positive or negative. So that's where I have to sit back and realize, okay, what am I impressing upon my mind right now? Is it good? Is it clean? Is it whole? Is it fulfilling? Because if it's not these things, then what is it doing for me? Is it creating boundaries? Is it creating, a void in my life? Because it's very easy to fall into those things, because, like I said, a lot of those things happen subconsciously. Our bodies subconsciously grow the hair on our body, pumps blood into
all the involuntary things that our bodies do in a day.
Our body and minds are so powerful,
right?
And we don't even like to give ourselves the credit of how powerful it is. And that in itself it's sad, because you have a lot more power and control than a lot of times you realize. And when you really sit back and try to sit with that and understand that, your reality will open, and it will, like I said, conform to you, because it is your reality at the end of the day. So I had to realize, recently, and just I had these same, thoughts when I was 17, 18, 19 years old, but I didn't understand how to deal with them. I didn't really know what they meant. I didn't, and I'm still figuring out what they mean. But now I'm in a place where I'm comfortable leaning into it. Not, like I said, I'm not perfect at it, but I'm comfortable leaning into it. And I understand that this is the way to get to where I want to get ultimately. And regardless of what I'm successful in, this mindset will allow me to have the happiest life. And that in itself, telling yourself that right there,
you keep doubling down
part of
on
it.
the
It's part of that self-actualization, that manifestation, because at the end of the day, prayer is manifestation.
Right.
No matter how you dice it up, that's what it is. We're telling our brains that something is already reality, therefore it's going to be that whenever the time comes. So you can pray to God, you can pray to whoever, but it is an inward experience. It tells, like I said, I just keep going back to the Bible, because that's the book. That's the book that I follow,
as you understand Him, man,
and that's how it resonates with me. It tells us that to look within, look inwardly, because if you're looking inwardly, I've said it earlier, it reflects outwardly. It's all an inward experience at the end of the day. We're just spirits in a flesh suit at the end of the day. We're not a physical being, really. So therefore, if you're able to understand that, you're able to have a lot more control in that spiritual realm, because you realize the significance of it. You realize you are a spirit at the end of the day. You are a light of God. We all, it says we all are made in the image of God.
If you want to make it scientific, I think this shit is interesting. So when a sperm cell meets the egg, when they merge together, there's a zinc, or it's called the zinc spark. There's a calcium influx or something like that. It's an influx of energy, basically, from the sperm entering the egg. And from that, there's this flash of light. There's this release of energy, basically warding off all the other competing sperms that were trying to get to the egg. It's the "you missed your mark" signal.
Right.
But that energy release, that light that comes from that, never leaves. That energy from that spark is what kind of cascades the division of the cells, you multiplying into becoming what you are as you live currently today. The same spark that created you is the same energy that circulates inside of you. So I used to, when I would run my groups, I would actually teach that you are a literal being of light. Like, and if you want to make it real, like as above, so below, it all. How did the universe start? There was a.
Right.
So I've always tried to push that lane where, like, it might be a reach, but to me that kind of is like almost too coincidental to be a coincidence.
And I if just like to kind of dive a little deeper real quickly. Go
ahead, man. We're gonna go all the way.
The significance of the womb and the significance of the birth also ties back into the manifestation and the birth of a new life. When people talk about finding God, or being baptized, or whatever religion that they relate to or that they identify with, it talks about it, like I said, in the Bible, where it's like birthing pangs. Growth is like birthing pangs, and then you come out of the womb and you are finally your entire self. You're able to be whole. You're detached from this womb. You're no longer able to be coddled. You've been pulled from this source.
Yes.
Because you're able to now live on your own. And that's kind of just goes back into, how we deal with mental health, how we deal with our own struggles, that oftentimes we allow them to coddle us. We allow them to, shape us in certain ways. And, our struggles, they're difficult, but they create who we are at the end of the day. There has to be pain before there is, there's there has to be suffering essentially before we can have, true satisfaction. Nothing comes without suffering in a lot of times.
It's the idea and the quote, a gemstone cannot be made brilliant without a little bit of friction. People cannot be perfected without suffering, without trials, without friction, without something. Friedrich Nietzsche actually talks about that a lot with his idea of the Ubermensch, right? Like characters like Frodo Baggins and Harry Potter and other characters like that who have damn traumatic storylines and processes, and they go through grief, they go through feeling doubt, feeling like their journey's never gonna, but they still find a way to push through, they still find a way to keep going.
And you want to know something like really interesting about that? So there's this thing called the hero's journey,
right?
If you've ever you may have learned about it honestly in English, or just talking about, it's like a full circle. You can look it up. It's called the hero's journey. You'll see it. It's like a big graph. There's a character, he has a struggle, he realizes it, and he fights these battles. He has a coming of age moment, and then he learns to deal with those struggles.
This is like the Odyssey.
And it manifests itself. If you can watch TV, you can watch movies, you can watch shows. Every show, movie, TV, like I said, has this plot line at its core. Because it resonates with our human nature.
Yes, it's the human condition to want to see somebody or relate it in yourself of somebody that, the underdog, right? Like the person who, they went through so much struggle and they had so many things stacked against them, and then they took it and then they learned how to use it, and then they had this big
coming of
redemption
age
arc moment,
right.
And then they go and handle and create all the success from all of the chaos, and it makes this big Cinderella story, this big, like you said, full circle of, we overcome our struggles, we overcome our difficulties. The things that try to stand against us don't get the final say. The villain doesn't win in the end.
And that's where I've just to relate it back to just the real, how I deal with it in my own real world scenarios, is when I'm going through something, it's not always perfect, but something that I'm trying to do and that I'm trying to really hone in on is, whenever I'm facing a trial, I'm facing a struggle, I have to try to sit back, remove myself from the situation for a moment and say, okay, what am I being taught here? What am I supposed to learn from this? Not, why is this happening to me from a perspective of, I don't deserve this, but okay, what are you trying to teach me?
And and I don't mean to cut you off,
good, go ahead.
But just with that, what I just heard was, I got to stop feeling sorry for myself. I got to stop hoping that, and that's another thing that I would teach in group, right? Is if I fall in a water puddle, I have two options. I can sit there and I can curse God and everything under the sun for that water puddle existing, me tripping in it and me falling, all of the good shit that goes with it. Or at some point in time, I'm going to be tired of being cold and wet, and I'm going to stand my ass up, realize that nobody's going to come do it for me, and I have to get myself out of that water puddle. I have to find a way to keep going, which really I think pulls into your, when you were talking about the womb and that separation, that death, that sometimes people don't realize, especially because we live in such a culture of, toxic positivity, and if it's not good vibes only, and I only want to be happy around me, that's not real healing.
No.
Healing is messy. Healing is down in the depths of murky waters, and sometimes it feels like death, because it is. It's the death of a person who...
It's the death of your old ways.
Your excuses, your defense mechanisms, that version of you that survived everything, and at one point got you. That's the version of you that got you here. It survived the trauma. It survived the bullshit. It survived all the emotional battles. But now that you're trying to evolve into this new person, it's holding you back. It's maladaptive now.
And that's there's a really good another really good quote. It said, I read, it said, in order to move on from your struggles, you have to learn to love what once controlled you. you have to take back you don't have to necessarily like the things, but you have to take your energy back from it.
And that's acceptance, man. I don't gotta like it. I don't gotta love it. I just gotta accept it. So it's tattooed right there on the knuckles, ladies and gentlemen. Amor fati. Love your fate. Love your life and everything in it. Not because it's all sunshine and rainbows. And I'm a big believer of good mental health isn't all sunshine and rainbows. It's having an umbrella on rainy days. Amor fati is the idea that I love my life and everything in it, the good, the bad, the suffering, the highlights of my life, because they're all mine. And they have all molded me and made me into what I should be and that I am now today. I wouldn't be able to sit here and have the podcast talking about the shit that we're talking about if I didn't go through addiction, if I didn't go through trauma, if I didn't go through all the things that I went through. They helped bring me here. So I just wanted to highlight, that idea of, like you were saying, that acceptance piece of like, I'm not going to keep asking, why is this my life? Why is this happening to me? When you take that, and again, like you were talking about earlier with the, subconscious mindset, when I take that step to really shift I'm looking for lessons, I'm looking for opportunities. When you shift from all I see is the problem, so now the problem is all that I can see, that's all I'm focused on, to I want solutions. I want to figure out how to overcome this. It's like all of a sudden your mind shifts and now you start seeing solutions. You start seeing ways out instead of just the block, the door, the barrier to success.
Well, your problems are only as big as you allow them to be. Your problems are only as big as you allow or you make them. So, if you're able to make peace with your trials, they don't control you the same way they once did. And I have regret. I have things in my past that I wish were different, but then I can realize at the same time that I wouldn't be able to be in the moment I'm in right now if I didn't go through those things. Like, it sucks to have to deal with them, and it sucks to have gone through them. Yes, pain always sucks.
Always.
But when you're able to be more objective and understand that I needed this almost. I had to be here in order to get somewhere.
I had to go through this. I had to.
And that's something I try to tell people too, is like, I love to encourage you. I love to, try to help you. But at the end of the day, it's your path. Your path is your path for a reason.
Let's talk about it.
Your path is unique to you because you're supposed to experience it the way you're experiencing it. And that doesn't give you the right to, just dwell in it, or it doesn't give you the right to, crash out about it. But it is your path. So make it yours.
Make it yours.
Make your story your own story so that you have your own unique success story, because nobody wants to feel like they're living someone else's life ultimately, because you're not happy. You're not truly happy doing that because it's not you.
And I think I'm happy you said that, because it's kind of like when I was in nursing school, when we used to teach like the pain scales to our clients, to our patients, we were taught, we need them to answer as honestly as possible. Mm-hmm. Because if you tell me you're at a 3, but you're really at a 10, I can only treat what I'm presented with. So if you show up wearing a mask, it's the same thing I teach my patients and my clients when I'm at work, because of mental illness is 90% subjective. Like, and I'm not saying that's an accurate statistic, but I'm just more throwing it out there right. But a lot of mental health is subjective. There isn't always a big bruise or a big break that you can just be like, oh, yep, that's depression. Oh, yep, that's anxiety. Oh, yep, that's bipolar. Oh, yep, that's XYZ. It's all what you tell me. It's all what you give me. So if you show up and you're not presenting as what you really got going on, how can I help where you're really at?
Yeah.
I want to ask you, while we're down here in the depths of everything, it sounds like you've had your fair share of shit in life, right?
For sure.
And I think, like we were talking about, sometimes that makes some of the best people, the people that can go through the shit and come out the other side with battle scars, with a damn story, and with this is how to move forward. I can lead you through this. Mm-hmm. What's one of the lowest moments you've had, and how did you get through that?
I'd say one of the lowest moments for me was, so I grew up with, in a single family house, or a single parent house, excuse me.
Yeah.
And, I only grew up only having my mom, and, she raised 3 kids by herself. There were
same story, man.
There were men that were around, but they weren't my father. They weren't father figures. And I got to a point where I started to develop just my own emotions, my own feelings, and just my own understanding of how the world works, not just based off of what I was told around, 13, 14, just going into high school.
Mm-hmm.
And I struggle with like a lot of just like undiagnosed and just underlying depression, because I felt a level of abandonment that I didn't know how to deal with. And I couldn't remove myself from that and not see myself in some ways as the problem.
Come on now.
I felt responsible for, someone else's pitfalls, and it allowed me to, or it caused me to engage in a lot of self-sabotage, because I felt I wasn't deserving of these things. So I'm going to make sure that I manifest things in my life that I can go, see, I wasn't deserving of this. See, you're right. Like sabotaging my own relationship with a partner or friends to say, see, it's justified.
In a way, we romanticize our own pain because it's familiar.
Yeah.
And when pain, I remember Jaquil, my best friend, he actually really told me that shit one time. He's like, Kyle, I think you like being hurt. I genuinely think you enjoy just being hurt. And I was like, you think I like this shit? Like, I can genuinely enjoy suffering? He's like, a little bit. Like, not because you want to be in pain, but because that's what you know.
Yeah.
That's what you're used to. So you stay, and anytime you could come out of it, you almost force yourself back in it just so you can be like, see, and now I can stay here because it's comfortable. It's familiar.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's interesting, I want to ask you, this is something I think about, and I've asked myself as somebody who grew up, my mom making it happen, very similar story to what you were just describing. Do you feel like as young men who didn't have our father in our life like that, who didn't really have overly supportive, or if anything, some of our male figures in our life were what not to be versus what to be. And granted, I still have very strong men in my life that I very much model myself after and try to be like, but in an instance, I guess that's really, do you feel like growing up without that presence, that male figure, allowed you to grow better and more authentically into your own self? Or do you feel like in a way it hindered you because you didn't have that guidance at such a young age, because you didn't have that thing that was that male presence guiding you along, showing you the ropes?
I'd say for me, obviously, it may be a little bit of a cop-out, but I think it's obviously a little bit of both. There's certain areas
That's not a cop-out, man.
There's certain areas where I wouldn't have been able to grow, that I am able to be now that I know I wouldn't have if I would have had that father figure. But there's also ways where I'm having to play catch up in certain ways because I didn't have that.
Yeah.
And, I think the biggest thing you can do is recognize that those things are present, and that, you're not perfect, and that regardless of if I had a father or not, I was still going to have my own struggles. And this is, like I said, just back what we were talking about a few minutes ago, it is my path at the end of the day. So I need to like hone in on it. Yes. I need to let it resonate with me, because it's not changing. It is what it is at the end of the day.
Fuck it is.
So what am I going to make out of it, and what am I going to become from it? And it's not always pretty the way, the steps leading up to, but at the end of the day, it is about what you become at the end of the day, and who you are when you look in the mirror, and how comfortable you are with yourself. And that's something I had to realize, like, I can't I can't subconsciously seek the validation that my father didn't give me.
Ooh, shit, yeah.
And I can't look for those in people that are never going to give me that.
Can we talk about that for a second?
No, yeah, totally.
The fact that at some point in time, sometimes I got to give myself the closure. Sometimes I got to give myself the validation. I think about the Will Smith scene, you know, in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air,
Yeah.
where his dad walks out
Right.
and he's like, I taught myself to shave. I'm going to be a better father than he ever. Oh, he just goes off. And mind you, that wasn't even scripted.
Right.
That was Will Smith really just having a fucking moment. I remember seeing that as a kid and being like, somebody fucking gets it. And it really inspired me to like, I can be, instead of sitting there being like, all of the things I don't have because of this. Again, that shift of mindset where I can become anything that I want to be now. I can be better than I could have ever. I have an open blueprint. Because again, making it scientific, in psychology, it says we go one of two ways. We either become our abuse and what we've seen and what's hurt us, or we become the exact opposite. And I remember the things that I saw growing up. I remember what I would come home to, what I was scared of in my house. And I think that's a really big thing sometimes, is when the monsters aren't the ones that are outside your window or hiding underneath your bed. They're the ones that are right down the hallway.
Well, it's like too, I mean, it's like, I don't know the full saying, but it's basically like, you know, you tried so hard to do one thing, you became the thing you swore to destroy.
And that's something I've taught in groups before, man. I remember I've sat there and I asked a room full of grown-ass men. I was like, how many of us in here, show of hands, how many of us in here had somebody in our life that we were like, I'm never going to be like you. I'm never going to do what you did. I'm never going to woo, all the different things. And then you look at that motherfucker every day in the mirror. Every time you look at, like you said, what I swore I was never going to become. In my attempts to not become it, I became it.
Mm-hmm.
I think in some instances it goes back to, like you said, starting with that self-awareness, that acceptance, that I'm not going to allow my pain to define me. I'm not going to allow what shortcomings and downfalls that lie in front of me write my story. I'm going to write my story. I'm the captain of my ship. I'm the master of my universe. I can decide right here and right now. And I'm a big believer in that, you know, that trauma explains behavior. Mental illness explains behavior, but it doesn't excuse it.
No.
At some points, we have to show up and say, because then what happened? You know, you bleed all over people that didn't cut you. Hurt people hurt people. Mm-hmm. So if I don't resolve my shit, if I don't deal with it, I'm going to keep repeating it. Mm-hmm. It's going to keep showing up. It's going to keep leaking into other things that now I'm sitting here wondering, like, I feel like I don't have that much shit, but all of my relationships are struggling. I don't feel fulfillment in my life. I feel a lack of, or whatever it be, because I'm not looking this way.
Well, I think too, in my own relationships, or just like, you know, in my love life, I've gone about things in a way where I've wanted to create conflict because I felt like that was what I knew. That was what was comfortable to me in a lot of ways.
Me yelling at you means I love you.
That was what I saw, or that is what, you know, was common to me. So whenever I was around comfortability, because I was, you know, I'm with a girl, she grew up with both parents, both loving parents. You know, no one's life is perfect, but she grew up with just a completely different 180 dynamic
of, yeah.
And whenever, you know, we would interact, we would have two completely different ways of going about things.
And it's like that old cliche, you know, it's different when you have somebody raised out of love versus somebody raised out of survival. And I don't mean to cut you off, but more just that idea of when you try to mush those two together, you know, it's somebody who constantly had support systems and constantly, they never really worried about going without, they never really worried about X, Y, and Z, versus somebody who they struggled a lot and they didn't always know where their affection was going to come from. Their love map is skewed and those different things.
And I think too, you know, I mean, it's not the case for everybody where that kind of is an inverse. I never really struggled as much with certain identity, parts of my identity, because I was forced to find an identity early on. Whereas, maybe her identity was given to her a lot by her parents and her values.
Mm-hmm.
And, she had more struggle with, shaping herself in her reality. Whereas I had to make my own reality from an early age because, A, it's a coping mechanism, and B, I just saw more things that I had to, deal with and had to resonate with me in order for me to allow me to get past them. So, whereas, I had my issues in those ways, she had the issues in her ways of, her identity was so set in what her parents had taught her and what she had just been told. She didn't always know who she was. And I thought, maybe in certain ways I knew a lot of who I was. I just didn't know how to handle who I was.
Ooh, let's talk about that for a minute, because like you said, you've gone through many different lanes. The athlete, student athlete, now model. It's a lot of identity shifts. That's a lot of different. This is who I am,
Right.
And that's not to say that two truths can't coincide.
For sure,
that I
for sure.
can't. Like shit, I have a podcast, I run a business, I do other things on the being a jack of all trades, wearing many hats. How did you move forward? How did you find yourself over and over and over again? Because some people, especially like around here in Lake County, we have a lot of athletes who they have these big dreams of, I'm going to go to the league. I'm going to make it to the NFL. I'm going to make it to the NBA. I'm going to go play baseball. I'm going to go make it to that next level. And then they get hurt, or they crash out and lash out. So their scholarship gets pulled, or some shit along the line, or they just, got to say it. They didn't cut it, you know?
Right.
So whatever it be, then there comes an identity shift. I'm no longer my sport. I don't have the thing that everybody's known me for so long. How did you do it multiple times, let alone once?
Right. And I think too, the big thing with that is you have to find one identity before you can identify with multiple things.
Ooh, shit. Let's start there. Because some people don't even know who am I really?
Yeah.
Go ahead, man.
And that's where I had to figure out, and I'm still figuring out. This is all still a work in progress.
Always.
Don't get me wrong.
Always.
And I had to figure out who I was with my core values and not just what made me, what gave me dopamine, but what made me feel peace, what gave me peace. And the things that gave me peace oftentimes weren't the things that I seeked in sports. I seeked the validation sports created, not the sport itself a lot of times, because I wasn't getting those validation in key parts of my, upbringing and key parts of my own personal life. So I manifested them through sports, through, just pursuing things. It's a lot easier to pursue an external thing when your internal is so messed up.
Man.
Because you can see it, it's attainable. Whenever you can't see the inside, it's a lot scarier, it's a lot more bleak.
Yeah.
And whenever you do put all this into this external chase and you don't get there, because the external is so fleeting, the external is always evolving, it's always moving, but the internal it's always going to be with you. So if you're able to, yes, pursue something, but at the end of the day, know who you are and what you're set in at the end of the day, what drives you.
Think about it like, somebody whose home life is shit, right? Like, I always want to be at my friend's house. I always want to be outside. I always want to go somewhere else. I always want to be away from where when I know I come home, it's messy, it's got shit going on. So flip that to a person where I like staying external. Like you were just saying, I like to go be outside. I like to be at somebody's club, somebody's bar. I like moving around. And again, everybody has a social life, but it's different when that social life becomes an escape or avoidance versus just leisure and recreation, but bringing it back to sometimes, again, that avoidism, that escapism being, I don't want to deal with what's inside my home. I don't want to deal with the broken windows and the leaks and the shit that I got going on. I'd rather just go, because it's easier, because it's like you were saying, it's much easier to just dive into the external factors versus that are constantly shifting, constantly fluid, especially in a society now where we have such short attention spans, constantly needing dopamine, constantly needing a fixation of something. Taking that minute to really slow down and look inward is almost boring in a sense. But I really want to capture, while I say the word boring, what you were saying earlier, peace. I think it's important to highlight that sometimes when you're so used to a life of chaos, peace can get mistaken for boredom.
For sure.
When I'm so used to having so many things going on, when I'm so used to so much energy, when I take a second to really just like, I'm just going to enjoy the sunrise. I'm just going to sit on my porch and people watch, like whatever your peace looks like. I'm just going to sit in the house and watch something on Netflix. People will be like, I'm fucking bored. This is, but it's what you've been praying for. You don't got people blowing you up,
right?
Drama going on outside. You gotta duck whatever beef, whatever shit you got going on. You don't gotta be caught up in all the rah-rah. I can just sit in my own. That's when I feel like I really started to really find my own peace, was when I realized I could create it. And I wasn't gonna find it in something else. I was never going to go to a bar and feel at peace. I was never gonna go to some random event and find peace. Peace would be something I had to give myself. I would have to find within myself.
Right. And I think too that goes back to where you can only cope for so long. You can only use external things and dopamine, like you said, as an escape before, even that runs dry. Those things
dopamine always wants more.
Those things stale out. And whenever those things stale out, what's left? There's nothing left. It's you.
It's you.
That's all there is. It's the person dealing with the thing. It's just an endless cycle. And if you get stuck in that cycle, it becomes very hard to get out of, because...
And that's really the premise of addiction, man. Like when you really look at the big picture of addiction, it's a dopamine cycle, right? Where I have this fixation. And a lot of people get this wild ass misconception that the only thing you can be addicted to is drugs and alcohol. Like social media is not addicting. Like caffeine's not addicting. Starbucks isn't addicting. All the other different things. If it can give you dopamine, you can get addicted to it.
Absolutely.
But the dopamine loop of this makes me happy in the moment, so I do it, and I, numb myself. All these things go away, and then I start to come down from that. I'm having a dopamine crash, and then what's left to deal with the shit now is all the fucked up comes back, all the things I don't want to deal with, all the things I've pushed away. It's like that episode of Adventure Time. Man, there's more demons here than I remember there being. Yeah. And then now I don't want to deal with that. So then fixation again, numb again, escape again. And now my dopamine's back up. And it's this artificial sense of dopamine. And then the cycle continues. And then it just spirals.
Well, I think of it as like in my own life where, I was in a relationship, and, and a part of our relationship where, we're doing long distance, and we're both in college, and we're both, separate. So, we're seeing each other on weekends and things like that. And that's when we're really connecting. So it was really like, this whole week was all this big buildup to this big dopamine rush for these 1 or 2 days. And then it's back down to a crash. And then it's back up to, super high. And there was never a leveling out period. And I began to realize when I just would sit with it, and more recently just kind of try to understand it, that we thought that we were, residing in each other, but we were just coping with each other.
Say that one more time for the people that ain't hear you, man.
I said a lot of times when we thought we were residing in each other, we were just coping
with each other. Man, break that down.
And what that, looked like in our relationship, in my life, was we had problems, whether it was our own issues or relationship-wise, that we were both subconsciously or consciously, using dopamine to distract from. But since we were doing it together, it almost felt like a together thing. Like, it felt
It's
like
like trauma bonding almost.
Exactly. It felt like a bond we were creating through the neglection of our pain. And when you're so blind to that, and then you realize your relationship isn't working how it needs to, but you're doing all these things that make you happy, but you're never, addressing the things that don't. It creates resentment in your own life. It creates resentment towards your partner. And a lot of these things don't happen at the surface, and they manifest over time. So when you finally get to a point where you understand it, or you see where it's going wrong, I don't want to say it's oftentimes too late, but the damage has been done in such a harsh way that you're left with 1,000 broken pieces when you didn't even realize the mirror was cracked.
Damn. And that's so real, because again, it's kind of like that idea of, we talk about toxic positivity, positive vibes only. When you only try to look at the good, when you only try to look at the on the surface things, you leave so much left untapped into, unlooked at,
right,
unresolved. So it's almost imperative that you go beyond that waterline, sometimes below that waterline, and really look at, again, almost like shadow work. Like, I have to look at the parts of this that are going to be uncomfortable, that are going to make us like, this might be a hard conversation. This might be a little heavy, but if we don't have those conversations, it's almost like we talked about again, like, I'm showing up as something that's not authentic. I'm showing up as something that's not real, because we're sitting here, like you were saying, we're bonding over all these different things that are essentially healthy. We're coping together, we're figuring things out, we're going through, but we're not actually talking about the disruptions, the chaoses, the micro struggles that we're having that are
hard.
Building up into bigger things.
Right. It's hard. It's not comfortable. And obviously just from a human element, our bodies seek homeostasis. Our bodies seek balance and comfortability.
Yes.
So when you're forced to look at the uncomfortabilities, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel natural. And it's something that you have to work. You have to work to look at your insecurities. You can't just do it.
You can't just shove your face in the mirror and be like, I see everything. It's,
it's a gradual process.
It's like, I think some of the best advice I've been given from one of my counselors was, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How do you eat a steak? One bite at a time. Because if you try to eat the whole thing at once, you're going to choke on it. You're going to burn yourself out. You're going to be tired. You're going to crash out. You're going to, whatever it be, that when you're trying to, and I think that's really important to highlight too, is when you're trying to heal, when you're trying to move forward with things or address things in yourself, it's like you said, it's a gradual thing. It's not a all or nothing. And that's a common cognitive, what's the word? Not dissonance. It'll come to me in a second. Basically, it's cognitive distortion. It's a warp in your thinking, where it's like when people are like, if I don't work out 6 days a week, I'm not working out at all. If they miss one workout, they kill their whole workout routine. And it's maladaptive because it's not practical. Like, if I miss one thing, I have to cancel everything. In that instance,
well, if you think of it that way, it's like, it's a subconscious way. I keep saying subconscious, but it is the reality.
Again, people don't realize how much your subconscious affects your day to day. It's like an iceberg, you know?
Right. And it's like, well, if I tell myself I have to be perfect at these things, clearly I know I'm not. So therefore, it's a lot easier for me to say, well, see, I knew I wasn't going to be perfect, so might as well not even try.
And then we bring that all the way back to where what the real root of perfectionism is one, it's a non-love for the self. You feel like you, in some way, shape, or form, inherently as you are not worthy of love, or worthy as you are of being accepted. So you feel like you need to constantly be better than what you currently are, or even deeper than that, childhood. somewhere along the line you had a parental figure, a guardian figure, make you feel like you had to live to such an expectation, and that if you didn't, you weren't worth what you would be if you lived up to that expectation.
Anything
So then again,
below is basically minute.
You're less than, worthless, piece of shit, all those different things. So now I'm constantly trying to, it's almost like people pleasing. I'm constantly trying to show up and look how good I did, look how good I did, look how good I did, wanting that validation, wanting that you did a good job. And even when you get that good job, it never feels good enough.
Well, that's something I struggled with a lot, and I'm trying to, rid myself of. Is I'll pursue a goal, I'll pursue something, but then once I get that goal, it's like, well, you should have done that anyway. Well, yeah, of course.
That's something I got bad.
That was how it was supposed to be.
I'm not gonna give fish credit for swimming. Like, yeah.
And that's something I had to stop doing, because a part of me thought it was a good mindset in certain ways, because it's like, you're thinking highly of yourself. You're not.
You
settling.
Set the bar high.
You're not settling, but really, you never give yourself those wins. You never allow yourself to
take a moment to really sit back.
You're never allowed to, applaud your accomplishments, because you're just moving on to the next. You're saying, well, I should have been doing that anyway. And it's just a constant, fulfillment of something that you're never going to be fulfilled in, because you can't be happy with yourself. You can't be happy with, your wins and losses. So therefore, you're just about moving on to the next. Because it can be uncomfortable too for some people to give themselves that love, that like, I did something, like I'm proud of myself. Because if no one else, it's a lot harder to be proud of yourself when a lot of people haven't been proud for you, or you've had certain people in your life that you never got that satisfaction from, so you don't feel like you deserve it. And that's one of the worst mindsets you can have, is the I don't deserve. God put us on this earth because he wants us to be happy. He wants us to thrive. He wants us to enjoy his creation. He wants us to, be able to look up and say, thank you, God, for all these things you've done for me. And if you never are able to, gain that appreciation for the things that you have created or the things that you've accomplished, nothing really feels worth it.
And then in that instance, you're almost like a thief of your own joy. You're robbing yourself of, because let's be honest, again, it's your brain, it's your nervous system wanting to keep you safe. You're so used to this good feeling can get taken away from me. So once I get to something that I worked for and I get that good feeling, I have to take it from myself. That way nobody else can take it from me, because if you take it from me, it's going to hurt a hell of a lot more than if I take it from me. So say I accomplish something big, say I make it to a big goal, and I'm like, oh, I should have been doing that anyway. I'm just shitting on myself at that point.
Yep.
Where it's something my mom's even talked to me about, man, where like at some points in time along your journey, you have to stop for a second to give yourself that pat on the back. Even if it is just a real quick, it's those little wins. It's that little boost of dopamine, that little tiny sliver of, I did do what I showed up to do. I did do good. I did do what I wanted to. And I can enjoy that for a minute. I can revel in for a moment that's a good feeling that I earned. If nothing else, I put in the work. I showed up. I got this victory, not because somebody handed it to me, because I earned it. And it's almost a disjustice. It is a disjustice to yourself to rob yourself of that, to take that away from yourself and then be confused. Why don't I feel good about this? Why am I angry about everything around winning and feeling good, and it triggering almost a survival mechanism in yourself to, again, self-sabotage a victory, a win, a goal accomplished, a obstacle overcome.
Well, if you wait for the negative to happen, it's going to come. And
it's like Murphy's Law, right? The more you fear something, the more likely it is to happen.
Exactly. And that's something like you just said, it shows up in those areas. If I'm waiting to be upset, or if I'm waiting to you know, not be satisfied, I'm going to be dissatisfied.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're seeking those things, even if you don't realize it consciously, they're going to manifest, and you will reflect those things.
And I just keep thinking about it, man. Like the subconscious is a crazy fucking thing, you know.
Right.
Like how much of just the little pieces of yourself that got put in a file cabinet, got compartmentalized and forgot about, they didn't forget about you. They didn't stop existing.
Right.
So they burrowed in somewhere else and they showed up as something else. And now 20 years, 10 years, years or months of abandoned feelings, abandoned thoughts show up now as maladaptive movement, maladaptive action. And I want to touch briefly on something that we were talking about earlier, you know, like that idea of escapism, that idea of avoidance, so that I don't have to look at necessarily what I have going on. Like you said, boxing and all the other sports that you were playing, it requires a high level of training, a high level of discipline. Have you ever found yourself training or working out purely just to escape for a minute?
For sure.
Just to feel something else?
Yeah, no, it was like certain points of it was like masochism. And, you know, I like to inflict pain on myself because I felt I deserved it.
And it's so crazy, you know, how we can be the same people to say, I don't deserve the good things in my life, but I definitely fucking deserve pain. Like how much of a skewed, maladaptive mindset that is. That I can sit here and be like, when all these good things show up in my life, I definitely don't deserve that. Not at all. But when suffering comes, when pain comes, when bad shit happens, like, that's me. That's my card right there all day long. Go ahead, though. I don't want to distract you from...
And part of me, I felt like, you know, even just on a like, just like a very surface level, like the idea of putting myself through as much pain as possible, whether it's physical or, you know, mental stress, was a way for me to cope and way for me to feel something and a way for me to, you know, kind of, it was a way for me to, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, reason with my pain. It was a way for me to, you know, justify it. I was able to justify my pain because, you know, I was able to feel something, you know, physically. Therefore, you know, it
almost in a way, self-harm without the scars.
For sure. And that's another reason why I stopped boxing, because I realized that I didn't need this anymore. I didn't need this part of this chapter anymore. I didn't have the same fire anymore, because the reason that the fire was lit in a lot of ways was through negativity. You know, like I chased this thing, not always. Yes, there were some aspects because I liked to do it and I enjoyed it. I love mixed martial arts. That's, you know, I love to train. But part of me chased the high of, you know, a boxing match or, you know, hard sparring, because, you know, it was a way for me to feel something. It was a way for me to, you know, test my limits and to have this emotion, this big, you know, physical, you know, an adrenaline dump into something, to where I was able to kind of dump my pain into it in certain ways. And when I realized I didn't need that as a coping mechanism anymore, my love wasn't there for it anymore. And
I can almost relate to that with football, you know, like in a way, like I remember that's almost, you know, you get taught that, like when you have like anger and you have all that pain and shit, like put it into contact, put it into full speed, you know, collisions. And it got to the point where I realized like I enjoyed getting hit or hitting like that because of the pain, because I could exude all of that energy into, whether it be just the effort in itself, but more than anything, like we were saying, that pain, that collision, that competition, whatever it was, I could dump my pain into something and it'd be accepted. And it'd be like, this is okay. It's actually making me perceivably better because it's helping me in my sport. But when I go home and I'm icing my wounds and shit, I'm sitting there being like, I didn't, again, back to that perfectionism idea. I should have been doing this, or I didn't go hard enough. I'm going to go harder. I'm going to, like you said, push that limit. How much more can I take? What else can I put myself through? And now that you have shifted outside of that boxing lane, which again, like we were saying earlier, is a loss of identity in its own right. Where again, you've picked up other ones, you've moved into new chapters in your life. Do you feel like your self-talk, that perception that voice in your head that was before the masochist, I deserve this pain, I want to feel and put all this malice into this activity, now do you find yourself having a different monologue, a different dialogue?
Totally. It's more like whenever I started thinking of things with a more of a lens of love and just, care and nurturing, I didn't have the same desires for those parts of my life. Like, I still have the desire to protect myself and protect others. Like that's just human nature. That's a manly instinct, whether you've trained or not. That's just a manly instinct for a lot of people. But I didn't feel the desire to pursue it in the same way once I manifested my, pain and my issues in a different way. Whenever I was trying to resort to love, I didn't feel like I needed this chapter of my life as much anymore. I didn't feel the same hunger for it because it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't my identity anymore. It wasn't, because boxing was a mental identity before it was a physical identity. And whenever I realized that, or I didn't realize that, but I was showing that before I was even out of it. And, my last couple of fights, before the fight, I just felt myself with no desire to be in there. I didn't have the same drive. I didn't have the same. There was more questions in my head. There was more what ifs.
You could feel it was off.
Yeah, it didn't feel the same as it did the previous year. It didn't feel the same as it did when I first started. Not because I didn't enjoy to train. I love sparring. I worked so hard because I cared. But at the end of the day, the competition didn't drive me with the same motives. I didn't have the same motives. I had the same motives I had to compete were the same motives I had to train.
And I think, and I'm going to come back to that, I think it almost goes into the quote, I read it somewhere, being self-aware is hard sometimes because I'm a witness to my own crimes.
Yeah.
I think it's important, and like you were saying, once you get to that point, like once you start to realize I remember, again, one of my counselors saying that to me. I was crashing out in rehab, and I was having that moment where it was do or die time. I was either going to leave or I was going to stay, and I was like brain splitting over it, and I was like, Tim, I don't know what to do. I don't want to die. I just know that I don't want to die. And he was like, Kyle, you know what you need to do. There's nothing I'm going to say to you. You know what you need to do. You have the knowledge. You know the things. You know the steps. You know what you need to do. At this point, there's no more excuses. So in a sense, when I become aware of why I'm doing things now, I'm doing this because I know I enjoy the pain of it. I know I'm doing this just to escape something for a minute. It leaves, now it's a different taste in the mouth when it comes to showing up for those things.
I realized after, I didn't realize it quite when I was in it still, but those were the reasons it was happening. But once I got out of it, I realized I never fought because I liked the competition. I fought because I liked the idea of testing myself, limits of what I am, but I also felt like a fight against myself. It's funny. It felt like, the movie Fight Club. If I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Fight Club.
I probably when I was younger, but not too at the top of my memory.
If any of you guys have ever seen Fight Club, well, I don't know. Spoilers if you haven't, but these two characters.
Did that movie come out like 10 plus years ago?
It was like maybe 2003, 2004. It's been a minute.
I ain't gonna lie to you. If you haven't seen that movie, that is on you. That's not a spoiler alert. That's on you at that point.
So basically, what the premise of the movie is, it's these two characters, and they're part of this fight club, and they're fighting together, and then they're going through this together, but it all comes back to them being one person. He's fighting himself at the end of the day.
So let me ask you real quick, as a boxer, as a fighter, which one is harder, fighting in the ring or fighting yourself?
I'd say it's fighting yourself, because the ring is just a product of those things. Because like I said, I was in there because I was in an inner battle, not because it was never external for me.
Right.
And whenever I realized that I wanted to shift how I fought that inner battle, I didn't have the same desire to hurt people as I did before, because I was manifesting my pain through love in a different light. Whereas before, it was through anger, it was through frustration, it was through dominance.
Yes.
Whereas, like I said, then it started developing. Now is through love and compassion. And I didn't have, like I said, I realized I never had the desire to just flat out compete. It was the desire to inflict pain, not even just on the other person always. It was myself. It was a way for me to win a battle.
Yes.
It wasn't about winning.
Almost in a sense, I struggle to win my mental battles, my internal battles. So let me go win an external one.
For sure.
Just to prove to myself that I can win a battle.
Facts.
That I can overcome something.
Facts. And when I realized I can overcome those internal battles, those external battles didn't feel as important to me.
Okay.
And I didn't feel the need or the hunger to strive after those. And that's where I was able to separate my love for competition and my love for training and my love for just the sport. And if you ever research or just listen to fighters, a lot of them come from very broken backgrounds.
I've seen that almost seems to be the common theme, even if you take it all the way up just to your typical movies, Rocky, Creed, and Muhammad Ali, all the way down to real life fighters. I mean, shit, dude, you're a living fucking example of that.
Right.
It's often the case that a lot of fighters tend to get into fighting because that is their way to really express that pain, that struggle, that really literal fight that they have in life. They can put it into something.
I don't know if there's a clip out there I think a lot of people would resonate with. It's a UFC fighter. He wins the belt. It's this tough fight. It's grueling. It's 5 rounds, split decision fight. He wins the belt, and the first thing he says on the mic, tears in his eyes, "Are you proud of me now, Dad?" And you could just see the manifestation of all that pain and all that suffering and how he put it all into this.
That was his Sasuke moment of
this moment.
meeting Itachi,
And
that's powerful, man.
That's how a lot of these people get to this point, and that's why it's such a, in a lot of ways, broken sport. Not in terms of, just the people in it. A lot of people in that sport are broken mentally, and they have the physical wounds to show it. And it's something that's super common and that everyone struggles with in that field in a lot of ways, and the people that make it to the top oftentimes are the ones that struggle most with it. Not always, but a lot of times. The people that are in there that you see those fights and you're like, man, that guy's he's tough. Like he's a fighter. That's because he's been a fighter since, he was 7 years old.
Doing it his whole life.
That's all he knows. So this feels normal. And for me, whenever the shift happened where that wasn't normal for me anymore. I didn't need that same competition to, cope with that emotion. I didn't have the same love for it anymore. And I realized that it's such a dangerous sport and it's such a time consuming, it's such a mental, focus that I needed to just remove myself from it, because, it was one of those things that was like, I did this and now it's time to put it back in the safe and lock it back up. Like, it's like finding, a diamond, you wear it for a little bit and you're like, I got to show it off, I got to experience it, and now it's time to put it back and keep it away. Like, it kind of was what that was for me. It was like closing a chapter of my mental health, and closing a chapter of, a physical thing that I was doing, to move on to my next part and how that journey was going to manifest in other parts of my life.
Do you feel like, because I know for some people, they like white knuckle the shit out of a chapter in their life where like, I can't, do you feel like you had to give yourself, first two things, do you feel like you had to give yourself permission to change, to permission to let that chapter go and no longer let that part of you be defined by that?
For sure. I probably stayed in it longer than I wanted to, because, there's ego. There's just, it's an internal battle. It's like, okay, am I leaving because, I really don't have the same love, or am I scared, or what is it? Like, because no man wants to feel like they're scared of something, or they're scared of someone else. And it wasn't even that ever really manifested for me, but it was just, I had to let go of something that, it was like letting go of a cope in a certain way, but not because this thing itself was the cope, but the way I was using it was a cope. And whenever I realized that, and had that kind of intuition, I didn't have the same drive for it anymore. I didn't need it. It was, like I said, I was able to close that chapter because it served its purpose in that time. It showed me what it needed to show me. And now I can turn the page. I can turn the page and now use those experiences to, propel my growth forward for the next chapter that I'm in, the next trials I'm going to deal with. And that's how I was able to, because at first when I left, I was just like, man, I'm happy that, it's like a weight off my shoulder, but like at the same time, I don't know if that's really what I wanted. But whenever I was able to, sit back and let time pass a little bit, I realized I'm in a better place now. That really was what it was. I am in a better place now, and I don't really need this validation or this, outside sourced thing that I was using, like I said, as a cope for some of my issues. And I was able to close that chapter, gracefully, because I was able to resonate with those things over time. Yeah. It didn't feel like a regretful thing. Like, it was like, I've given all my energy that I can give to this, and now my energy needs to go somewhere else.
Yes. So that actually perfectly segues into the second thing. How do you define winning today?
I define, there's definitely several ways. I feel like, I think it all depends on what I'm doing too. It depends on if it's school, if it's work, if it's, relationship. I think those wins are all calculated differently.
For sure.
And I think a win for me now, in a lot of ways, is being able to put my mind to something or do something and fall in love with the process of how I got to that point.
Falling in love with the process. Go ahead, man. Keep going. We're going to come back to that one.
Because the process for me was always something I rushed. It was always something I neglected because I was so focused on the end goal. And, that's very common, obviously. That's something a lot of people deal with. But I was able to kind of start to sit back and realize the process was so much bigger than the end result and the end goal. that if I didn't learn to find joy in the process and I didn't find peace in the process, the end goal was never worth never worth it, and it was never going to mean anything to me. And that's why I struggle with those things, like I said, of, well, it was supposed to be that anyway, because I didn't ever look back and, you know, appreciate that process and appreciate those building blocks that allowed me to get to that point. And, you know, not just acknowledge those, but be proud of those, you know, whether they were always good or bad. But I was able to, yes, meet this goal, whether I got there through, you know, complete, you know, ease, or it was just very, you know, very difficult. I still appreciated the process and the joy that the process would bring of discovery, because I knew at the end of this goal that I was going to have a newfound, you know, it was just like another, you know, chink in my armor, where I could, you know, another badge that I could add to my belt. And, you know, you're never able to earn that badge if you don't A, do the work, and you don't B, appreciate the work. And that's what I'm trying to do more now, is appreciate the process more than try to focus on the end result.
And I think it's important too, like you were saying, and like we were saying before, really, when you show up and you finally get to that end goal and you neglected the process, hated the whole time, the whole journey, the whole way there, and now I'm wondering, like, I finally have this, I achieved the goal, and now I feel like it means nothing and it's just pointless. I almost feel like, in a way, it's like, you know, again, like your subconscious or your spirit being like, you know, you missed all these lessons, all this level up along the way, that now that you're here, it's just kind of like you didn't actually learn what you were supposed to learn along the way. And I think it's funny, you know, like just the oldest cliches, it's not the journey or it's not the destination, it's the journey. But like when you really break that down, again, Friedrich Nietzsche, been one of my biggest research or focus points lately. But just that idea of the process, that suffering, making purpose of that pain, because that is what really, making meaning of that pain, because that was one, it makes the arrival to that goal, that destination, mean so much more. And that's not to say that we're going to romanticize our pain. We're not going to glorify suffering just for the sake of suffering. But at the same time, in a way, learning to love the pain that makes you grow. Mm-hmm. Learning to trust that process, first of all, because like you were saying, a lot of times we try to rush it. It's not happening right now, that instant gratification. It's not happening right now, so it's not happening at all. And in times where we have to really kind of let that plot thicken, letting certain pieces come to fruition, letting certain things line up, so that it's like when you're putting a puzzle together, you know, like when you dump out the box and all these puzzles or pieces are laying everywhere, it's really hard to see that big picture. It's really hard to see the full thing of what you're trying to create. But putting each piece together is the fun of the puzzle. Being able to challenge yourself, being able to have the discipline, have the perseverance, have the patience, actually sit there and make it happen is the fun, is the work. And then when you get to that end result, now you're like, holy shit, I put this whole thing together, instead of just sitting there like computer, whatever the fuck, having somebody else do it and then being like, it doesn't mean as much.
Well, it's just like, I mean, in sports, it's like, you know, winning a game, winning a championship, all those things, whatever the sport may be, the memories you look back at are oftentimes not the moment you hoist the trophy.
Right.
It's, man, remember that one game whenever we were down, blah, 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 and we came back and we did this. Or you remember at the end of the game, at the end of the championship game, whenever you know, got that steal and, you know, you were able to get that layup that, you know, sealed the game. Like, those are the things that resonate and the things that you look fondly on. Yes, the end goal was great and you're happy to be there, and it's a fulfillment, but the fulfillment doesn't come without all those other things. And once you're able to recognize that, the whole picture becomes, you know, a lot more it becomes a lot more beautiful to see that, you know, it's like an artist, you know, we don't get to see the artist's process. We only get to see their result. And you appreciate an artist's result when you see their process.
Yes.
And how they get to that point.
Yes.
And that's why, for me, like as doing architecture, whenever we do year reviews, like end of the semester reviews, they want us to show those beginning designs. They want us to show those early sketches. They want to see how you got here, because yes, we love to see the pretty picture, but we also like to see how your mind was working. We like to see how you were developing, because that's just as important as what you spit out, and oftentimes more important, or sometimes more important, because like I said, it shows your process. It shows your it shows how the brain works. It shows just your level up. A lot of people resonate more with your level up than your final product, and that's why people love to follow influencers on their rise, and people love to be in a sports figure's corner when they come up, because it's easy to resonate with. But once they make it,
you no longer, you feel that disconnect now, because I can relate to somebody who doesn't have it all the way figured out. I can relate to somebody who's broken or
who's
bent or
struggling just like me. But
then as soon as they come up, they make it, they're on now. I can't relate to that. I've never held $1 million. I've never had hundreds of thousands. I've never had, all the X, Y's, and Z's, the bells and whistles of success. And then almost in a way, it creates bitterness. It creates resentment, where now I feel put off by that success, and put off, and which is, without saying, a maladaptive mindset. What I do want to do, though, I do want to pivot and get into the last little part of this here, where, again, you are a person that it requires so much discipline to show up in the sport avenues, boxing, and now even then modeling. That comes with its own huge set of nutritional standards, I guess, is really the point here. Between sports and just maintaining a figure, maintaining an image. What are, if you had 3 nutritional facts, not even facts, habits, things that you do or you've seen in other people that benefit them, what are 3 things that you think somebody that has no knowledge of nutritional, no real basis of a foundation, where would you start somebody?
So I think a big factor, and something that's like really just basic in principle, is what you put into your body is what's going to, reflect outwardly from how your body moves, how your body adapts, and how your body reacts. So, if you're putting clean things into your body, you can expect clean results.
Yeah.
And that's something that, if you're able to learn early on, and you're able to have that relationship towards food or towards dieting, it's a lot easier to pursue it, because you're seeing the benefits in action. You're seeing the results play out by, fueling a workout allows you to have a better workout.
Yes.
Fueling a workout, with good nutrition allows you to have your, best performance. And that's a very, very important side of it, just generally. Another thing is, just like life, your, nutrition or your workout journey is going to be up and down. It's not going to be a gradual incline always. Me, I've had moments where I've struggled with, restricting and binging and thousands and thousands of other people have had the same experience, because it's about, understanding both extremes.
Right.
If you can understand both extremes,
a literal feast and famine.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you can understand both extremes, it's a lot easier to find your middle ground with that, because both extremes are bad, but they just have their own set of consequences.
Right.
And some people resonate more with one side of the consequences than the other. Some people would rather be super skinny than super heavy, and vice versa. But both are not attainable, or not attainable. Excuse me, they're not sustainable. Both are incorrect in nature for how you should go about dieting and health. So I think something you can just be aware of. You don't even have to really. You don't even have to participate. You shouldn't participate, is essentially, but recognizing that neither end of the spectrum is positive in a lot of ways.
It's like you were saying earlier, that homeostasis, that balance, finding that common ground in the middle.
Right, exactly. And another one, and last one maybe for now, would be just you have to go and you have to be okay with challenging yourself, and you have to recognize that it is going to be a challenge at certain points. And that kind of does tie back into my first point, but you have to be okay with the journey. You have to resonate with the journey. You have to be okay with the pitfalls, because it's a lot easier to pick yourself back up knowing that you could fall. Whereas if you're running and you don't think you're ever going to stumble, when you fall, that you hit the ground way harder.
Yeah.
And
it's actually, samurais used to say that before they went into battles. It was the idea that if I go in thinking and expecting that I can't lose, I'm going to lose. But if I go in humble enough to know that I could die, I could really die, it allowed them to fight freer, with more acceptance over a very real possibility. Not to distract from too far from what you were saying, but just along that idea, have you ever seen somebody take their diet and shift it and really clean it up, try to eat better, try to move better, and it changed their mindset? Or is it a mindset change that has to happen that creates the nutritional routine?
That's an interesting question. It's a great question. I'd say it just depends on the person in a lot of ways.
Comes down to the individual.
I think it depends on which one resonates more with you, which one feels easier to you. Because a lot of people really do struggle with food, and just they don't understand the importance of, or the relevance of it,
Because again, making it scientific, it's one of the systems of your body is your gut microbiota, right? And then you have the gut-brain axis, and then how in some cultures they really believe that you have three brains. You have your literal brain, and then you have your heart, and then you have your gut. That's why we have gut feelings. It's actually been proven that, your gut has so much impact on the way you feel, the way you think, the way you move throughout your day to day. So again, kind of going back into that, if I'm putting bullshit in my body, and then even bringing it further back to if I'm at a low vibration, I'm eating things that I'm consuming things, putting things into myself that make me feel lesser or bad or not good, and not really helping my body. And then my vibrational state lowers with it, and now I'm attracting lower. It's just a cycle of.
And that's where it's like, the Bible talks about treating your body like a temple.
Yeah.
And that's not just with food or with just the things you impress upon your mind. It's all of it. It's anything that goes inward will reflect outward, like we talked about earlier. And it's an overarching principle that is going to manifest itself in all aspects of your life. So yes, they're tied together, ultimately one to one. One happens because the other is happening, and vice versa. And they tie in together so well and so seamlessly that, yes, your physical health grows and your mental health grows. Your mental health grows, so you have more desire to chase physical health. It's one of those things that they become synonymous with each other. And that's why I've really tried to just focus on my diet whenever, there's moments where I do feel out of control in certain parts of my mental health or just my, life circumstances, because it allows me to regain control and regain access to that mental side, you know, because a lot of people do use food to cope. A lot of people do turn to bad habits, whether it's alcohol, whether it's, you know, eating honey buns every night. Like we all cope differently,
Right.
and it's at the end of the day, it's all coping, and food is just, like I said, another way to cope.
And like I said, food can give you dopamine, and anything you can get dopamine from, you can get addicted to.
Right.
And there's literally an Overeaters Anonymous, like people that genuinely struggle with food addiction because it can be so comforting, because it can give us such a sense of satisfaction and safety and security.
And that's why I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
That's why whenever someone starts their journey, maybe not right at the beginning, but once they start to get a habit, I encourage fasting. I encourage, you know, taking breaks of eating, because it allows you to appreciate the food more.
Mm-hmm.
It allows you to separate your mental state from the state of eating.
Mm-hmm.
And it allows you to resonate more with your internal self rather than the things you're necessarily consuming physically. You know, you're just forced to focus more on the things you're consuming mentally. And when you see, like I said, when you see food as fuel and you see food as a power source, it doesn't have the same hold as you see it as a necessity. While it is a necessity to survival, it's not a necessity to be who you want to be ultimately. You know, it's just another tool.
Mm-hmm.
It's a necessary tool, but at the end of the day, a tool. It's not the main driver. And when you can separate that and when you can pull that back, it just allows your relationship with that thing to be a lot more sustainable and grounded.
I want to ask, because in a lot of ways, because I'm just sitting here thinking about it, you know, that sometimes when people, like even just the things that we're talking about nutritionally, it can be ambiguous in a sense where like we can say something, somebody can say something about how your diet should be, and then somebody run completely left with it, or completely, you know, where it's like, whoa, like somebody can talk about intermittent fasting, and then that becomes like it actually goes both ways. Like people focus so much sometimes on anorexia, where that's obviously super important, holds its own weight and its own principles and its own attributes that be looked at when it comes to eating concerns. But then on the other side of it too, where you get almost like a both are body dysmorphia, but like on the other side of it where you, like powerlifters and people who become obsessed with making themselves as big as possible, this infatuation almost with, and then it becomes obsession with counting your macros, making sure every single, again, it goes back to almost that perfectionism where I don't feel like I'm good enough. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like as I am and as I show up, I matter as I am. What is a common misconception or a common fallacy that people have about eating healthy or changing their diet that actually hurts their progress?
That you have to be perfect with it. That you have to, if it's like an all or nothing mindset.
Yep.
If I don't eat this way, then I might as well not at all.
Yep.
And I love to preach to people the 90-10 rule, you know.
Break it down.
So the 90-10 rule is 90% of the time you eat clean, 10% of the time you enjoy yourself,
right,
or you indulge. And it's not a 50-50 because the balance with eating is a lot different than just what balance simulates as, you know, in nature. Mm-hmm. Because our bodies do require nourishment,
right,
and good quality things to fuel it. But there is also a side that, you know, we like to have things that make us happy and feel good, and that's not inherently bad, but it's about everything in moderation.
Right.
Finding that moderation. If you're not able to find that moderation, then you're going to have a negative connotation towards those things. You know, if I tell myself I can never eat pizza or I can never eat cookies, then of course I'm going to hate dieting.
Because you have already made it more of an uphill battle than it really needs to be, in a sense, because like you were saying, all things in moderation. I know I've seen a few videos of different power lifters, strength coaches. I know especially the one dude I'm most like, he had a running ad for a minute where he's like running on the treadmill, fucking eating a pizza, being like, I still have this to, like, in some instances where, like, yes, you have to be disciplined, you have to have that consistency, and like you were saying, that 90-10, where more often than I'm showing up and I'm doing it the right way. But then again, even like we were saying with goal setting and accomplishments, sometimes I have to give myself that reward of like, I did good, so I can not necessarily fuck off and, just be like, but it's literally called a cheat day for a reason. Where like, yes, you are going to indulge a little bit. I'm going to give myself some reward and gratification, because if I don't reward myself with some form of, like, especially working out and dieting and nutrition is such a delayed gratification thing. It's a results show up later kind of thing, that if I don't give myself some reward, I'm going to get burned out. I'm going to eventually be like, this isn't worth it. I don't see my results. This isn't worth it. I would rather eat cake than be 20 pounds lighter, or I want to have that extra burger versus a 6-pack. And where, like, again, if you do it in smaller quantities, and I was actually just talking to my girlfriend's brothers about this earlier, where like a caloric deficit, where like some people think that means that you have to eat less, versus a caloric deficit being like you have to burn off more than you are taking in. So that could really just mean you work out more or work out harder to compensate for what you were eating.
Right. No, I there's definitely nuance to it depending on the person and lifestyle, obviously, but it was funny because I was gonna make a video, like a little TikTok tomorrow, like post my casting that I'm going to. I've just been like the last, generally, like I said, I'm dialed into my diet, but leading up to it, you dial in extra hard because you want to look your best and be your best. But at the end of it, I was gonna do like a video, like leaving my casting and going and get myself a nice pizza, just be like, hey, you don't have to, you can still eat pizza and go do the things you want to do and go look good on camera, or you can still, it's not going to change who you are because you did this one thing. Where things like that become negative are repeated behaviors, not singular behaviors. And that's where I try to, encourage people that you can't shut everything out like that from your life because it'll make you miserable. But you have to learn how to create a relationship with it that is sustainable. And
pacing yourself.
Yes, and you can't, and it takes effort. You can't do it all at once. Sometimes you do have to restrict yourself from those things for a while because you haven't reached a point to where you can handle it.
But then that really comes down to how much do you really want it? What sacrifices are you willing to make? And how are you really willing to show? And I think it's also important, like you said, you haven't even shown that you can handle that yet, and you're already trying to bite off more than you. It's like the idea of like, I want to be a millionaire, but I've never held $10,000 in my hand. So if somebody put $1 million in your hand, you're going to fumble it because you don't even know what to do with 10.
Right. Totally.
So, no, go ahead. My fault.
That's definitely how it is. That's exactly how that stuff, shows up, because if you're not capable of, making the small steps, then you can't afford to you can't take big steps either. So it starts small, and then you take those big steps, and then you can afford to take some side steps,
But you have to show up and prove that you can even take those big steps first, and then have the consistency and the discipline that when you do sidestep, that it doesn't keep being a lateral movement,
or then it turns backwards.
That you can have that cheat day and then step back, or I can basically really just that I can handle I'm going to have a cheat day, I'm going to have that 90-10, where if you know that you can't do that and it's just going to set you backwards, then you're almost setting yourself up for failure.
Well, another way to look at it for some people is like sex, for instance.
Okay.
You know, when you are abstinent, or when you are, you know, you're straying away from sex, or just, you know, that release, it doesn't have the same significance. When, not to say it's not enjoyable, it's not something you still like, but it doesn't hold that same power over you that it once did. And it's the same way with food. Like those things that you crave, that you were fearful of eating, when you step away from them for a while and you go back into it, it's like, it's not as big a deal as I thought it was.
And I can relate to that even really heavily too, like about just, you know, the substances I was abusing, you know. In some instances, I learned to hate that version of myself, the things that I was doing. I learned to hate, not necessarily, I'll retract a little bit, not hating myself, but hating the substance in itself that I was doing, because of what it was doing to me, because of what it was doing to the people around me. And in that instance, after time goes by and you start to look back on it, like, almost puts a bad taste in your mouth. Like you were just saying, I don't even want to do it now. When I think about like how much I used to romanticize it and glorify it, now I sit here and it's like, you make me do X, Y, Z, and I'm not that version of myself, and now it's almost like a turnoff. Like I don't even like the idea of it anymore, and it's ruined its own image in my head, where now it's actually helpful when it comes to staying on the path, you know, staying focused.
Yeah, definitely.
And because now it's not as much of a temptation.
Well, that's where, you know, quote unquote cheat days, or just, you know, refeed days, or whatever that we want to call them.
I do want to throw the disclaimer really quick. For my addiction and recovery community, we don't have cheat days. We don't have days where we can just step left and then come back real right quick. We are a little bit more, but when it comes to your diet and nutrition, and it's a little different. But
certain things,
please don't relapse saying that I gave you a cheat day pass. Please don't.
Certain things hold more weight than others.
Yes,
most certainly.
Yes,
most certainly. And yes, that's where, you know, you have to realize that whenever for me personally, I would have those days where I would indulge in things that I was, you know, that held power over me before, and I would realize that they maybe not that they weren't as enjoyable, but that they didn't hold the same weight as they once did, or they just, I don't need this anymore. Like I can have this experience, and I can chalk it up to an experience. It doesn't have to be a lifestyle.
Man, we've talked about a lot. We talked about a lot, man. From all the aspects of the subconscious, battling, you know, our own shortcomings in our relationships and how we can be better, overcoming sports, identity, discipline habits, body movement. In all of those things, in all of these different versions you've had to become, that, you know, we've had to become as people, to be the versions of ourselves now, to really kind of sum it all up, whether it be to the younger version of yourself or to somebody sitting here watching that may be sitting in these same instances. First, let's break it up. First, what would you say to your younger self? What would you say to a version of you that wasn't here yet, that wasn't on this side of the battle, of the journey? And then what would you say to somebody that's just starting, that's trying to navigate to getting to where you're at? And like we said, we're still growing, we're still becoming. This is an ongoing process.
Right.
We're always leveling up. But even just to get here was a fight in itself.
Well, first, something I would tell myself is, or a younger version of myself was, you are capable, but only if you want to be capable.
Okay.
You can do whatever you want to do with your life, only if you are the first person to realize that you are capable of the things that you want to do. And you're capable because you are able, not because someone else has enabled you or because you are doing it for someone else first.
Right.
And something I would tell, people watching and anybody that, comes across this, that it starts and ends with you. Ultimately, you are the beginning and the end. You are ultimately, and this isn't coming from a place of just like solitude, but it starts and ends with you. You're all you have at the end of the day. You can't leave your brain and go to someone else's body. You can't, manifest yourself in someone else's mind. You're you for a reason. So figure out why you're you and figure out what defines you and go make the most of that, because you only have one life to do so. There's no point in just being unhappy. There's too much unhappiness in this world. There's too many things that are going to try to put you down. There's no reason. You don't need to be your own biggest enemy.
Hell yeah, man. Fucking wise words. I appreciate you very greatly for making it out here.
Awesome.
Making it able to make it on the podcast. I couldn't have asked for, a better first episode, a better conversation to really kick off just what we really do, what we're really trying to capture, which is this right here, man, that first of all, my trauma never defined me. Overcoming it did, that I don't have to be defined by my past. I don't have to be defined by the things that held me down, and that healing is messy. It's a journey. It takes time. It takes patience. It takes tolerance. It takes understanding. It takes willingness to even go to those depths, and then the perseverance to keep pushing, and that it is possible, that we can make real mistakes, that we can have real pitfalls, real setbacks in life, and still succeed, and still win, and still have the last say, not our pain, not our trauma.
And, like the last thing I'll say is that, it happened this way for a reason. Like this, I wouldn't have felt comfortable coming on here to say the things I'm saying now, not even 2 months ago, not even maybe a month and a half ago. So, all I can chalk it up to is, God's timing, and, just right place, right time.
Yes.
And, that's what you have to also realize, is that you're put in these situations for a reason. You're put in positions of success, positions of failure, positions of doubt, because you're supposed to be in that position.
Yeah.
So when you're in that position, whether it is good or bad, make the most of it, because you never know where that next step is going to lead to.
Hell yeah, man. Well, I think that's really, I almost feel like they're mic drop, that's just shit. At the end of the day, that was our first episode. This has been Beyond the Ruin podcast, voices outside of Beyond the Ruin. If anything that we talked about this evening, and I can't even say this evening, bro, it's 3:00 in the morning. I worked a 9-hour shift. You've been ripping and running all damn day. But at the end of the day, this needed to be said. This needed to happen. And that kind of shows, again, that whole level of when you want to do it, you will find a way to make it happen. Because whether I'm tired, whether I feel like quitting, saying fuck it, whatever, again, I really want to end it on this. It's, again, Friedrich Nietzsche, Ace Boon Kuhn right now, man. To any person who has a why can face any how. When the why is more important, and this is one of the things I actually just, in one of my videos, when your why is more important, you will find a way. And the why for this at this point. It's like we were kind of talking about before we turned the camera on and everything. How many people, especially just throughout here in Lake County, struggle with things, and the disparity between what a statistic would say 20% of people in the United States suffer with a mental illness, but how many people do you interact with or have seen that are hurting, that are struggling, that go through things and feel like they can't talk about it, feel like they have to put on the strong face, the brave face, and just keep pushing through it. This is that space where we're going to talk about it. We're going to get into the nitty gritty. We're going to pull the mask off and we're going to talk about this shit, because that's the only way you heal. That's the only way you get better, is when you really look at, like we were saying before, the shit underneath the waterline, the things that have been hiding in the deep corners. We got to dig it out. And that's the only way we get better. Because again, it's not the trauma that defines you. It's overcoming it. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned.
Peace.